So if I can't be fully real with what's going all up in here, how am I going to be able to have the capacity and the bandwidth to also be fully aware of what's going on with my husband, fully aware with what's going on with my children? That requires a level of capacity, bandwidth, and presence that comes with a nervous system that isn't consistently and constantly in a place of fight or flight, duress, or just adapt. There's got to be a place in there that experiences actual flexibility.
This is the Illuminate podcast, and I am your host, Rebecca Boatman. I am fascinated with human relationships, from going on first dates to understanding attachment styles and how our personal spiritual mission plays a big role in all of it. I created this podcast to invite you into conversations with inspiring leaders and I, as we explore different topics surrounding dating, relationships, money, and spirituality. Before we start, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And my one ask, and a great way that you can contribute to the podcast, is to leave a 5-star review. And now let's jump in. Today's episode is with Dr. Jeannie, who is a true torchbearer for humanity dedicated to reigniting passion and possibility. She facilitates this reignition as a network spinal and somato-respiratory integration practitioner. She has worked with thousands of people nationally and currently owns and practices at the Hive Chiropractic and Wellness Boutique in Austin, Texas. Dr. Jeannie believes that the state of your nervous system determines the state of not just your life, but specifically your health, business, relationships, finances, and even desired impact in the world. She is known for illuminating raw truth with humor and grit to help people optimize their experience and outlook on life so they can inspire change in others and be a beacon of light to elevate humanity. And now let's dive in.
When you are innately wired or cued to what's possible, and I mean literally from the get-go, in utero, as my emotions, my thoughts, my everything is informing every single cell of his to how to put itself together, to how to prepare, how to be on the quote-unquote outside or the other side, his system is wired to expect some of the things that we might think of or experience as impossible.
Wow.
Because he doesn't have any of that other shit in the way.
Wow. So does that mean, as you're pregnant with him and the daughter who, now, what you're thinking and feeling throughout the whole pregnancy then impacts their little being?
Yes. So what's crazy, so you want to think of, okay, all right, here we go. So you want to take it back to like, oh, I've got relationship things. Like, where does this come from? Oh, it's my mama's pattern. But it goes so much further and beyond that. When you think about your mother, right? Pregnant, that cell, and this is something that we have talked about years and almost decades before, but now is becoming more prevalent as we, as things are being rediscovered. But the effect of generational energetics, how it is that we are cued to respond. So that cell that was already in your grandmother, right? That was in your mom, that made you already existed in its full glory. Because it's not like it's like, oh, she's born and now she's going to make her eggs. She has all the eggs she will ever make, which she's born with them.
Yeah.
So the environment in which your grandmother was in, then impacts the egg that makes your mother, that impacts the egg that makes you. And biologically, as the fetus is forming, as the baby is forming, it is gathering that information based on the environment in which the mother is in. So sometimes what I find, like with practice members, they're like, oh, I've got to keep it cool. Like, push all the stress away.
Yeah. Pretend it's not there.
Pretend it's all amazing and wonderful. I'm so happy to be a mom, but they're literally dying inside or crying, or they don't want to feel the sense of the things that are meant to come up. Okay. Because stepping into motherhood is a whole nother transition. It's a whole nother initiation. But we have this tendency to like override. And as long as it looks good on the outside, it must be fine on the inside, but it's not really. And that emotion, the energy of that information is helping to inform what it's going to be like on the other side. So the ability to be more authentically you. Even if you potentially don't even know what that is, okay? But just to be, let's just say, just to absolutely be. The more that you're able to do that and be at home with that, that baby is also now being informed that, hey, it's okay to also experience the full range of that emotion, the full range of life experience, because now the information that's informing every single cell that eventually will grow now has a wider range to pull from versus potentially the version of you that was, oh, we're just going to be happy, frustrated, and sad. Maybe sometimes angry.
Yeah.
But as human beings, we need that in order to not only have a greater range of emotional expression, but what's the importance of that? It's also immune function.
Health.
100%. So if the system in itself has been cued to not experience a full range of emotion, every cell can't do its full job in responding in rapid action, especially when related to hormones, especially when related to immune function. So it's just really fascinating to me to go, oh, wow. And then experience and see how that has essentially been passed down, through the generations.
Why do you think people and the system has been cued to, hey, don't feel, hey, hold it in? Where did that start?
My sense is that somewhere in the development, okay? And if we look at history in itself, in terms of times in which, and we're talking first-tier consciousness, okay, where it requires wounding in order to experience joy. That in order to survive, there had to be a lot of binding of resource, a lot of binding of emotion, a lot of binding of energy in order to just simply survive. Mm-hmm. So over time, literally as a means of survival, it's coded within the generations to say, okay, like, hey, simmer down, tone it down a bit or keep it at bay, because if you go a little bit further, if you push that edge just a little bit more, you're going to die. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So now that isn't so much as a threat in the forefront, the ability now to be able to kind of explore and see and experience some of these different things, especially with this other second tier, consciousness that's coming up that says that's no longer necessary to have to bind. The magic is really in the unbound energy and resource that's available, which I think for some people, it's still kind of a mind fuck. Yeah. Because you're like, oh, but in order to be worthy, I need to struggle. In order to be deserving, I need to go through every pinhole, which isn't necessary, but we're not fully there yet. But my sense is that that's really, it's been a survival mechanism. And so as the systems now start to reorganize, and part of my jam is helping people to remember what is working, that prefrontal cortex, that evolutionary part of the brain, can now say, all right, Rebecca, what's really going on? Is your way of responding to life, is your way of being addicted to struggle, okay, as a means of survival still necessary? Or is there something else that's available here?
Yeah. And when you say back in the day, right, say years ago, we would withhold that energy or we would stuff it down because we were afraid of dying. To make it even more specific, just so I'm understanding correctly, would it be, oh, if I actually show this part of me, then I look vulnerable, therefore I'm weak, therefore there's more, I'm going to get demolished somehow or killed or...
Well, in personal development, spiritual development, let's talk about it from that point of view. From the time that you were about, let's say around 9, 10, 11 years old, at that point when the lower mind starts to come in, as there's a purpose for that, to have to refocus the energy that says, this is okay, this is not okay. This is a yes, this is a no.
Black and white.
Exactly, because if I do this, I will die. If I don't do this, I might survive. Or flip-flop that, vice versa. Yeah. And the purpose of that, truly from a tribal point of view, is to fit in. If you didn't fit in and you didn't allow yourself to assimilate into the tribal culture, well, then what would happen?
You're kicked out and then you can't live on your own.
Exactly. And so I feel like there's a kind of coming home to all of that also. There's wisdom in that. There's a value in that. And a lot of the time through some of these parts and pieces in history where there wasn't the ability to actually fully engage in that and to fully reap the benefits of that, because then by the time you get to be that young adult, you should have a really great, not only understanding, but experience of what that's like to choose this and experience the consequence of that, whether positive or negative. But if that was never allowed, or you were set to say, oh, just do whatever you want, and there was no set boundary to say, this is what the self must experience, and this is what would happen if you didn't. If that doesn't exist, then as a young adult, you kind of go, who am I? And now it's just that there's so much more unbound energy. It's like it has nowhere to land. Does that make sense? So you find yourself just spinning. I'm just going to try this. I'm going to do that, but in the timeline of when that would have normally happened, now it's like, it's kind of happening in this really fascinating order.
Wow. Okay. Oh, this is so good. So I want to share the story of how I met you. I think that's really powerful. So Dr. Jeannie has an office here in Austin called The Hive. And I was a friend of mine who recommended you. And I went and did a session. And inside this session, I answer all these questions. And
so many questions.
Yeah, so many questions. Dr. Jeannie's amazing. And she, and then I go and I lay down on the bed and she's doing energy work, right? Or what would the proper term be?
Oh, such a great question. It is energy.
Yeah.
And this specific technique, because it is a chiropractic technique.
Yes.
Is really a system of analysis that really allows us to look specifically at the spinal cord, because that is really the conduit for everything. Mm-hmm. How much energy capacity you have in your system, what thoughts you think, what emotions you feel, all based on the state of your spinal cord and your nervous system. So what we do is this process of allowing your system to get really raw and real with what's happening.
Yeah.
And then to also remind you, this is what's working.
Yeah.
This is what's working over and over and over again. So is it energy? Yes. Is it also extremely scientific? Yes. Network spinal is one of the most researched chiropractic techniques on the planet. Not a lot of people know that. And it's, it is what it is. So
when people haven't heard of it, I'm like, really? You haven't heard of it? So I came to see you because I had an injury here, and I don't get injuries. So this was wild. And I saw 3 chiropractors in 1 week, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Jeannie I think you were one of them that week, and the absolute best. And you helped me connect and see that it was a lack of trust in the masculine that was happening. And this is what blew my mind. Okay. You guys, imagine. I barely feel it. What feels like a feather touching, not even a feather. It was her hand though, on my neck. And literally within 2 seconds, I full blown thought I was going to have a panic attack. I feel all of this energy. And then freaking tears they started bawling.
Yes.
I started absolute bawling. And it just blew my mind. And it was a huge release from literally what felt like a feather. So what happened, Dr. Jeannie? Explain.
Okay. So number 1, we always address where the energy is. We always address where it's working. Why? Because when we do that, your brain is more available to pay attention. I'll illustrate this in another way. So when you are under, let's just say pain, because it was neck pain, yeah. Right? And when we look at the nervous system, when it is overwhelmed and there's no room, right? Our tendency is to go to where it's painful, analyze it, look at it, touch it, do all the things like
entertain it.
Absolutely, in order to fix it, right? And we continue to focus on what's not working. Are my thoughts aligned with this? What am I manifesting?
Yeah.
Like all the questions. And yet we're bringing our attention to the part that's already overwhelmed. So imagine, Rebecca, you on a really busy day, full day, and shit's just gone awry. Like the things that you never even thought could go wrong were everything was going wrong, right? And you walk into the door, and even though your honey has something really wonderful and loving to say to you, and you're already in this space, and you're like, I need a moment. Like, just give me a second, right? And he doesn't listen to you, and he just comes charging in. What happens to your system?
Feels like a lot of pressure.
Feels a lot of pressure. And even if it's like a big bear hug, I just saw your face. You're like, right? But that's it. See, when in those moments when we're already so overwhelmed, and that part and piece of your body that is already overwhelmed, if I were to go in there with a force as massive and as big as the tension that you might have felt, would it have been receptive?
No.
No. So even though the area that we might go to may be right next to that part that's been screaming for what might feel like lifetimes, when we go to where it's working, the brain has an opportunity to fully assess and say, okay, what's really going on here? What's really happening? And that ability for that energy and information to travel through the whole system and then back up to the brain literally takes, less than a millisecond, because it can travel that fast. Then the system can fully assess and say, oh, is this still necessary? Is this still necessary? Is this still necessary? And in the process of doing so, by recognizing that there is a part that works, all of a sudden the parts and pieces that have been holding on for literally what might feel like dear life, all of a sudden go,
wow.
And that effect can last 24 to 48 hours, depending. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's body is different. But again, the reason why that's so impactful is because we're addressing where there is available energy. And we're helping your system, your nervous system, to not just re-regulate itself, but to literally in that moment actually upgrade. It's like, we plug in our phones all the time, Yeah. Well, I don't really do that, right? But I'll be real. But
it's not,
you know what I mean?
Damn it.
But like in those moments, it's like, wow, your system all of a sudden, or it's like you look at your phone and you realize how many apps you have open.
Yeah.
And how much that's been utilizing your battery. And you go, let me close them. And what does that feel like? When you finally it's just so bizarre. But in that moment, you're like, oh, right?
Yeah.
Or the tabs that you have open on your computer, same jam. Your nervous system is walking around in this same way, all these tabs, all these apps open, utilizing all this energy just in case. But if your system can fully assess and say, oh, wait a minute, there is no just in case anymore. That was 12 years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
That was absolutely 100%. That's not necessary anymore. Oh, then what can happen? The whole system, the way that it is innately wired to do, can now actually fully adapt and reorganize with more energy, more bandwidth, and more capacity than potentially it was literally 5 seconds beforehand.
Wow. So it almost sounds like opening up a door in the spine or in the energy of the spine, opening up a door that then allows the energy to move, to reorganize. And then that release of the crying was that discharge that I didn't need to hold it anymore.
Well, when you look at emotion, emotion is energy in motion, right? And it can show up in so many different ways for people. So, and I don't want to lock it down to just either crying or whatever it might be. It could be laughter, right? It could be anything within that whole spectrum of emotion. And I love that you said, is it a doorway? Because what our technical term for that contact point is a gateway.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we want to get super nerdy about it, that gateway is actually this almost like a 0 point place where every single possibility exists. And it's where the unbound energy that's available meets the bound energy of the body. And in contacting that, every system connected to that, the energy then becomes available and then does whatever it is that is needed to do. There are certain consciousness patterns that are associated with the spinal patterns of how your body adapts. So the amount of energy that might be bound in lack of trust in relationships, maybe potentially for you that day, it was like specifically with the masculine. I think that had to do with some other history things that you had shared with me. But in that moment, again, the system goes, is that still necessary? And then all of a sudden the gift within the wound now becomes available.
Wow. And energy is freed up.
Energy is now freed up. It's more available for you to be able to do or create whatever it is that it's meant to.
Okay, my friends, I'm briefly pausing this episode to invite you to something very special. If you are ready to access bravery and to challenge your current sense of self and to step into and embody your new sense of self, one that is a frequency match for the partnership, for the things, for the life that you desire, then I invite you to explore my Meet the Frequency membership that is full of powerful step-by-step workshops to help you become a frequency match for the life that you desire. The link is in the description below, and you can use code ILLUMINATE for $20 off. And now back to the episode. So is there a relationship between energy centers and gateways?
Not at this time. In somatorespiratory integration, so this is like kind of I like to call it the midwife of network spinal care, where you use your own breath, touch, focused energy, and movement on your body. In some instances in that, when you place your hands in particular areas, there might be some relationship to certain energy centers or chakras and things where, the consciousness of that might be similar. But where these gateways exist, and I'll say in this moment, because who knows, as these things continue to evolve, this work has evolved so much from the time that I've been, in it. And this is why I love it, because humankind continues to evolve, and being a part of a work that continues to evolve with humankind is so my jam.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say right now, to be revealed.
Season 5.
Right, totally.
It would make sense.
Absolutely. And I think that where some of the bound energy might be stored in the system is something that I would be curious to explore about where that is in relationship to some of the energy centers. But at this time.
And I know you really support people in feeling safe in their bodies, feeling safe in their nervous system. So will you share more about the benefits of allowing yourself to unwind, allowing this energy to be liberated?
So I feel like physiological safety there's a time and a place for it. And I might get crucified for saying this too. I also, my other sense is that there has been such a, there has been such an anchored importance to safety. And there's a time and a place for that. But when your life is looking to grow and you're seeking adventure, safety and adventure are in opposite directions.
Really?
It's like certainty and uncertainty. Certainty and love are in opposite directions. When you are in massive moments of like soulgasm city, okay? Is there certainty there?
Because you're in the unknown, most likely.
Right. So when we are looking and seeking for this sense of certainty, and we're experiencing the magic and the unknown of what love can bring, those two are actually in two different directions. And yet, when we speak about wanting safety and desiring a sense of safety, I have to ask with a follow-up, what is it that you mean by that? Because I think that the meaning that we've attached to what safety means is actually very different for a lot of people. But we've internalized it to mean XYZ. So it's almost like we've set up a rule that says, I can't experience this until I experience whatever safety means to me in the body. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because being able to be attuned to the energy that a word has and being able to be attuned to the energy of what it is that you actually desire, those two things might actually be in separate directions.
Well, what the hell do you do then?
Well, here's the thing. So when we talk about that, and it's just establishing, okay, safety, yes, in the body. Because I think in order for, and here's another way that I like to put it, it's not necessarily just safety. Safety is a brilliant consequence of being able to just get very real and very raw with where you're really at. Like super real. Some people, we bob along like everything's fine, everything's great. You know, when I put my hand on their spine, I'm like, what's happening? Like, what's really going on? Oh, everything's fine, Dr. Jane. I'm like, you know, I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah.
In that moment, the system might be in so much overwhelm that the brain can't even track to even vocalize or to say, in this moment, I feel I seem so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing is to get real, with what this is. And when there's the ability for the brain to actually assess and say, oh, this is what's happening, that can translate as safety because now you can be present.
Like, I keep hearing transparency. It's like I'm fully transparent with my body, my heart, and my mind and what I'm saying and what's going on inside of me.
Totally. And that's presence. Like I can fully be present. No charge, no desire to have to fix or judge or do anything different. It's like I can just be present. And so I feel like sometimes when people say safety, it's that they're actually looking for a sense of transparency. Do you really see me? Can I allow myself to truly be seen by you? Mm-hmm. Can I be present? Can I actually allow myself to experience what it feels like and to be witnessed in being fully present?
Yeah. And I feel like what you just said so deeply relates with your ability to have a connected, intimate partnership.
100%. 100%. Because, and again, I'm raising my hand. I have been on this side where it's like, I just want you to understand me. Can you just understand what I'm saying, you know? But it's not understanding that I'm looking for. Truly, if I get really, really down and dirty and super real with that, it's not that I'm looking for him to truly understand. I just really want him to be present with me.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. And so I feel like every lady needs to go put on their bio looking for a present partner. But I think with what you just shared right here, you're looking for your partner to be present. So then do you request sometime like, hey,
oh yeah. I mean, and listen, it didn't happen overnight, okay? So, and there's like a whole nother season about this, girlfriend, about being able to see and experience and understand, not just understand, but to know how it is that my partner sees the world, how my husband sees and experiences everything, because it's very different from how I see and experience everything. And how I might say or request something is actually a big drain for him. So there's a whole other rewrite of how it is that I am paying attention, but that requires a system that can pay attention. So if I can't be fully real with what's going all up in here, how am I going to be able to have the capacity and the bandwidth to also be fully aware of what's going on with my husband, fully aware with what's going on with my children? That requires a level of capacity, bandwidth, and presence that comes with a nervous system that isn't consistently and constantly in a place of fight or flight, duress, or just adapt. There's got to be a place in there that experiences actual flexibility.
Yeah.
Right.
I love what you're sharing because as our listeners are like, oh, I desire an incredible partnership. It's like, this is what you're sharing.
Yeah.
Being able to be present, being able to be transparent and allow that to be your number one focus and then see what unfolds from there.
100%.
And do you feel that the more present we can be, the more love we're able to experience?
Yes. And not only experience, but then to also to give and to receive that, right? So when we think about the energy of love, okay, so energy of love, like how big is that for you? Show me. Like what is that?
I guess I always think of that everything is love in different forms.
Great. So where do you experience that? Like where is that like for you?
I would say it's everywhere. It's
everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Like go ahead, girl. Like extend your hands out. Yeah. Yeah.
Or knocking stuff down in here.
Right? Big.
Yeah.
Big. Now go to the place where potentially, and my sense is that a lot of the women who either are trying to manifest that desirable relationship, maybe potentially have had things happen in the past, they've been burned, they've been whatever it is. But I'm just going to use this as a big contrast. So when I say the word scarcity, Do you feel the energy just drop? Like it just went through
cold.
Like you just looked at me,
Contracted.
like you just went. Where is that? Like what happened? Like where do you?
I don't know why there was something here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now is the energy that's available when I say scarcity, was it as big as love or was it somewhere like this?
No, more contracted.
Okay. So when we're manifesting, and a lot of the time, we want to manifest in the times when we don't feel abundant, right? When we want to manifest when we're like...
We're desperate.
When we're... I was just going to say, when it's like, this is the last straw, like, it's either happening or it's not, right? Never again. I'm never going to have that happen again. I'm never going to be walked all over. I'm never going to, whatever, fill in the blank, right? And notice how when I said that, what my, like the energy and like even my body, what was doing, it was like pushing away. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the time when we're manifesting or having this desire, a lot of the time it's to move away from something. But when we go back, and this will go back to where love is. Mm-hmm. So if you just go back to where that energy is and saying and experiencing, I want to experience more love. I want to experience, maybe it isn't just love. Maybe it's like magical, seductive rapture. I don't know. Yeah. Let's just, that.
I like what you threw out there.
Okay. Yeah. What if it was that? And I want to claim more of what that is in my life. So the fine line between being able to manifest and to have a desire from a place of more versus I want this because I don't want that. That's a totally different trajectory. That's also a very different trajectory and capacity for a system who's trying to manifest something this big, but is coming from a bandwidth that's like little exciting. It's like this little place. It's like, I want love,
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the capacity for the system to be able to receive from that place is tiny.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It reminds me of when I used to do private coaching, we would ask, what is it that you want? And people would always go to what they don't want. And then I'd say, okay, what do you want? Sometimes 3 or 4 times. And their brain was like glitching their system out. And then they finally would start sharing what they want. And it was always emotional.
Right.
It was always emotional. And something I heard so often was to feel at home. Like I heard that from thousands of women, which when they would peel the layers back and share, it was like to feel at home, it was beautiful to see those themes.
Totally. And that sense of feeling at home is presence.
Yeah. Wow. And so I was going to say deleting like we're on a computer, but essentially cleansing the thought. Would you consider them thought forms or the energy that is keeping us from feeling at home?
Well, it manifests in different ways. And there's actually multiple energetic intelligence that we experience and have within us and around us. You have your bioenergy. You have your emotional energetic intelligence. You have your lower mental energetic intelligence. You have your upper mental energetic intelligence.
What's the difference between upper and lower?
So lower is really more about the focus. It's about, remember how I said the this or the that?
Yeah.
Right? It's the ability to draw from and know like this is the boundary. This is where, we're talking focus. It's like, you see what I'm doing? I'm like, we're getting shit done, right? The upper mental is more of the upper thought. It's the ability to be able to see the bigger picture. It's to be able to ask the question, what's really going on here? Right?
Yeah.
The lower thought or the lower mental energetic intelligence might be very focused on the circumstance. This is the event, this is what happened.
Seems material.
Very matter of fact.
Yeah.
The upper mental is going to be asking different questions. It's going to be able to see and experience things more from the evolutionary part of your brain. Mm-hmm. From the upper mental, then we have the personal soul energetic intelligence. And then we have what we call the weaver. This is like universal intelligence split up into all of these other different intelligence that we all have. Mm-hmm. So when we think about these different thought forms, it's not necessarily so much thought forms, but it's like, how has the energy bound itself? Is it more in the survival energy of that life force? Is it more of the emotional energy? Is it thoughts? Is it the, is it the inability to be able to, again, see the bigger picture or share and give my gifts with the world? It can bind in so many different ways. Yeah. But what I love about Network Spinal is the fact that we could, and I say we because there are many of us that practice this, surprisingly, where we can assess the system and actually see how that's I don't want to say manifesting, but how that's showing up in the system.
Yeah.
And what's really more on the forefront? Is it more soul energy? Is it that there's more survivor energy here? Is it more emotional? Like, we can actually assess that and, again, utilize where the energy is to then affect where it's all bound or where it's being held in the system.
So do you notice it based on feeling or based on location or based on the movement of the body?
All of the above.
Like, tell me all, Dr. Jeannie.
Yeah, because when
fascinating.
when we're assessing the system, and you can say operating system, that's actually something that I say all the time, is that your nervous system literally is an operating system. I used to utilize the comparison or the analogy of looking at your system like a computer. And I used to utilize Windows 95 versus like operating system. I don't even know what Mac uses now, like 3075, something like that, right? So you might have a system that's still wired as a Windows 95 computer trying to do the things that a Mac OS up-to-date system is required to do, but how much energy are you utilizing continuing to try to operate in this new version, but your operating system at its core is still something that's so out of date.
Yeah.
And so when I hear people saying, oh, I've got a dysregulated nervous, again, I might get crucified for this, that's fine. I've got a dysregulated nervous system, and that's just it. Like, I'm dysregulated, and I'm doing all the things. I'm doing all the things to regulate my system. Well, think about it this way. You've got your Windows 95 computer, still trying to function like a Mac OS, up-to-date, whatever it is, and you're doing all the things. You're running all the programs, but at the core of it, the system in itself doesn't have the capacity, doesn't have the bandwidth, nor the ability, literally, and the structure of its being to be able to run this program. We have to upgrade it. So, you know, you can spend all the time in the world saying all the affirmations and all the mantras that say, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough. And yet, if the system in itself is still in a place of defense physiology or is still functioning in that fight or fight place, no matter what it is that you say, no matter what it is that you do, at the basis, you're still, and the energetic capacity of that system, which is probably almost like nil to none, it just doesn't have room. You're doing all the great things. But it's like we've got to, and you were actually spot on, we actually do have to delete some files. It's like we got to delete some files for your brain to actually consciously say, this is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take any other work on your part. Like, literally, you just have to lay down on the table. We make a contact and your system goes, oh, I remember what's working. And simply by that moment of remembering what's working, your whole system can reorganize because now it has more energy available.
And it naturally wants to reorganize.
Yes, because that cell, so let's kick it back to just one tiny cell. One tiny cell, and I place it in the center of a petri dish. And I split that petri dish right in half. One side of it, crappy environment, but really easy to get to, but non-thriving. Other side of it, absolutely thriving environment. That's where the magical, rapturous, seductive, land of magic lives, okay? But thriving, nutritionally sound, that's where that cell would thrive. But there are obstacles in the way. You place that cell right there in the center. Which one do you think it'll choose?
Does it naturally go to comfort? What's easier?
No.
Does it go to what's more amazing?
Yes. So even though there are obstacles in the way, it will consistently choose the one that's most amazing given the choice. This is the key. If I had taken that cell and just placed it in that really easy to get to situation.
Shithole.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. With no other reference point for what was on the other side, it would just continually choose that because it was easy.
Because it didn't have the reference point.
It didn't have the reference point.
Wow.
So when we make that contact, all of a sudden, the whole system has a reference point of what it's like to feel fully connected, what it's like to experience a sense of ease, what it's like to be fully present, what it feels like to be home. And in that moment, the system then will go, how do I consistently choose this? And it doesn't matter what it has to do or how it needs to cue you, whether it's the pain in your neck, whether it's, the pain in your foot, your pelvis, whatever it might be, your stomach. it's going to continue to usher you toward making that decision and choice that's going to help to allow it to live in that optimal environment. So, to me, it's like we're taking your whole system and consistently just, again, giving it a reference point. This is what's possible. This is what's possible. Until the system then recognizes, holy shit, this can be my baseline.
Yeah. This can be my new normal.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Okay. I feel like this is very connected to or would support people who are thinking, man, I just always choose crappy relationships. I just always choose things that don't serve me. And they just feel like they're broken. Like, I feel like I'm broken and I don't trust myself. So I'm going to make those same choices. I don't want to end up in that same scenario. And I feel like what you just said is so powerful because it says, hey, no, as you allow yourself to see evidence or to experience something different, you are actually going to naturally be drawn to that and to allow that to be your experience.
Totally. And it takes a rewiring. It does. It really does. And it takes a rewiring. It takes a whole new seeing and experiencing the culture in which we have been around. Like, for the longest time, the idea to heal was to focus on what's broken. Keep focusing there. Keep focusing there. Keep focusing there. Feel it. Deeper, harder, faster. And now, and especially, and this is why I love network spinal or epi-energetics really is, which is like the overlying umbrella of what it is that I do or bring to the world, is that refocus is on where the energy is and what is working. Mm-hmm. And if we can really continue to focus and bring more of that to the world and then allow everything else to reorganize around that, then it's like it's not necessary for us to continue to keep like beating that dead horse like over and over. There's actually wisdom that can come through. And when I just also want to be clear, it's not like I'm saying to never feel that or to be with that, but what if you could feel and be with that, but like through a different doorway?
Yeah.
Like, oh, clearly this one is locked, but we keep knocking. Maybe this time somebody will answer, or maybe this time somebody will open the door. But instead of continuing to try to keep going through that same entryway, what if you could experience that circumstance, that event, from a different opening, and then how you see and experience it actually just automatically shifts and changes. And so for that person who's like, oh, I keep making these same mistakes, or I keep making these choices, or blah, blah, blah. Number one, you're not broken.
Yeah.
Second of all, it just takes a reconnection to what it is that you're wired for, which, by the way, for everyone, like, you're wired for extraordinary. And in order to claim that, you gotta do the things that are beyond ordinary for you. Maybe it won't make sense.
Yeah.
Most of the time it won't. I'll be real.
It never does.
It never does.
The most extraordinary, amazing things that have come into my life, it's always surprised me, and I couldn't have predicted how it was going to happen.
Exactly. And was that certainty or uncertainty?
Uncertainty. I have the angel bumps. Chills.
See, there you go.
So how do we live in that space, Dr. Jeannie, all the time?
That's such a great question. Well, I think for number one, I'm like, everybody get your nervous systems checked. I mean, yes, right? In an ideal world, like, every single person would have access to network spinal or something that allows their system to truly reorganize and upgrade.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, it really takes a sense of awareness. And not just to be aware of the things when things are going really shitty, but can you also be aware and acknowledge and accept when things are going really amazing?
Yeah.
Like, give that part of your life also as much attention and love and justice. So for number one, though, be aware. Like, where is your being in that moment when things started to go downhill? What was the energy in that moment? Were you lost in your thoughts? Were you so deeply sucked into the pain? Did somebody just come up to you and say something? Or did you get a text from somebody and all of a sudden,
yeah,
like your whole system just tanked, and then all of a sudden it was like everything from that point just went. It's not the circumstance. It's the energy that then became available in that moment because whatever thought, whatever emotion, we allowed it to take us down. right? So be aware and then be able to acknowledge and actually say it out loud, like, this is the circumstance, not the story, because the story, oh, we're so good at the story. Like, let me call my girlfriend and like tell her all the things, and it's a really great way to say, no, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling really frustrated, like I'm pissed. Are you really pissed? Or are you just really good about talking about being pissed?
Like, are you actually will you share it?
Yeah.
Just so people can have a reference point for, okay, wow, I'm actually feeling it and moving through it, or letting it express versus I'm just
in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Emotions are meant to last seconds and at most minutes.
So good. So minutes meaning 2 minutes or less.
Yes.
They say, one time I heard it takes 90 seconds usually for the whole thing to process.
Great. So yes, it can. And sometimes it can be as quick as that. I mean, think like, okay, here's a great example. Think about a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's so true. And they're
right?
They're screaming, crying, and you think they're acting almost, but no, that's probably how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
So you think it's going to be normalized one day where we're going to the grocery store, Dr. Jeannie, and all of a sudden I'm pissed, and then I'm like, and then human adults don't stare at me like it's weird. Like, do you think we'll get to that point where everyone's just okay and moving on?
Totally. Because that's what we're meant to do. It's just that we've like really made things very weird.
Yeah.
I'm that person when I am at a restaurant and I'm enjoying what I'm eating. I'm the person who's like, oh, like, oh, so good. Like, I will not hold it back. And then people are like, oh, I'll have that, Yeah. But it's like, yeah, you can do that. I'm also that person who's at Whole Foods and they call my number after like, waiting for my meat for like however long. And then they call my number and I'm like, whoa, yeah, let's do this,
Yeah.
Like, but like in that, because it's like same thing as a toddler. So that emotion is only really meant to last for seconds, maybe minutes if it's something extremely like big. Yeah. Anything longer than that, now it's a thought and it's a story.
And an attitude.
100%. And what role, we could go on and on about all those things, but at the very basis, like that's it. Like emotions, boom, boom. Doesn't mean that after that's done that you won't experience another one. You may experience another one and another one and another one and another one. What I would expect, though, is that as that moves through, how you experience the circumstance will then also change.
Your response to it.
Yes.
Because I'm imagining that the first time, if there's a big charge, you'll feel that charge and then it becomes more neutralized.
Yes. Or yes, exactly. Neutralized, or it just as you're allowing yourself to experience the emotion or whatever it might be, or just, let's just say, allow the energy to move. Okay. We can be aware, acknowledge, and accept the energetic of what that situation was, and then feel the emotion that potentially may be a result of that energetic. Allow that to move. And now when you see or experience the circumstance, are you okay with actually experiencing it differently?
Wow.
Because a lot of the time, when we can be real here, it's like there's so much addiction to the neutrality of drama. Of like, ooh, but culturally, I should be really fucking mad at him. So I'm gonna, or your girlfriends are like, no, why did, don't give him, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
And so
we think that's also to fit in because I want to respond the way that I'm going to be, I know I'll be accepted and liked if I respond the way they would too.
100%. And I mean, and of course, not to make my girlfriends wrong, because a lot of the time, yes, they do shed some illuminating light on things that I'm not willing to see. And in those moments, and as a girlfriend for somebody, I have to ask myself, am I perpetuating that energetic because it's like, oh, we're now we're tribing, who run the world, girl, and it's and it's those moments where you have to go, oh, wait a second, we don't have to be in this place of suffering and being like, to feel this interconnected, sacred womanhood together. Like, we can also bond on again, that rapturous, seductive, magical, place of life. Like, that's also a place where we can bond. So, oh my God, we could have many seasons of things.
I know.
I was just like, okay,
I have a question coming in from past personal experiences that I feel like women will be able to relate to, or our listeners will. I remember when I was single and dating, when there was someone in front of me who was not present, who was checked out or just not attentive, I remember thinking, oh, I want them to be present. I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to get them to be present with me. I'm going to, become worthy in some way so that I have their attention. They are focused then on me because I was desiring that, but then of course choosing people who didn't have that capacity. So will you share that, everything that based on, and that experience?
Well, my next question for you would be, what does it mean to you when he's not present?
It was probably that I'm not worthy of presence.
Okay. So in that moment, is it really presence that you're looking for, or is it the ability to actually feel worthy?
Probably the ability to feel worthy and seen.
Okay. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, if there's still a part of you energetically in your field that's saying, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. And let's say that overlaps with a part of you that is desiring to be visible, but yet also simultaneously invisible. Because let's be real, it's like, see me, but don't. See me just
behind. You go in my closet. No windows.
Right. So, I mean, there's so many layers here because it's like I wish I could just spout out like, oh, this is the algorithm and this is the formula you need to, but just to be aware. So here we're being aware. What does it actually mean when we're asking for presence? Like, what is that? What are we really seeking? So from that place, then going, okay, am I desiring to be seen because I don't want to feel unworthy? Because that's a whole nother jam where we become obsessed with like, see me, be with me. Like, how do I do all the things so that like, hello, like waving, like
give me attention. Yeah.
Neon sign, right? But your field, your energetic field is literally blaring. Here's visibility. Let's just say visibility is a thing, being seen. But if I'm truly being seen, then he's actually going to see that I feel unworthy. Then you can follow all the other thought patterns, all the other emotions that are stacked with that. So even though there might be the desire for that, your field and how that informs your nervous system, how to act, how to feel, how to actually experience life is now based on actually moving away from something to then feel whole with something. But again, they're in two completely and totally opposite directions.
Holy crap. And what was wild is fast forward.
Yeah.
I remember when my partner now was fully seeing, like fully present, fully here, like every single particle of his soul is just boom. And you'll meet him tomorrow, actually. Yeah. I remember freezing, like my heart, it was like, I'm supposed to be feeling something. And I remember, but literally it felt like there was like just something frozen in front of my heart.
Right.
And having to be like, oh, wow, I've always wanted this. And I saw how much I was struggling to let it in.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, it's like, well, number one, you finally got what it is that you've always desired.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that whole part and piece also. And then like, well, what is that? How does that also then in that moment deconstruct everything that you ever thought about yourself?
Yeah. And
in that moment, then being willing to step into a completely new role, identity, being, I mean, we can go on and on and on. Like even for some people, it's like their whole brands are built on the fact that they had been in broken relationships or unable to find. And then now all of a sudden they are and they go, oh, shit. You know?
Yeah.
So again, I think it just goes back down to like, what's the energetic that you experience? Words are so powerful in themselves, but what's even more profound is the energetic that we've actually attached to the meaning of that word. So for instance, again, like safety, presence, all of those different things, just by you simply being aware, wow, my energy dropped right there. What happened? What
Yeah.
was that? And, so-and-so said,
I got flipped off driving down the street.
oh, yeah. Yeah, we're in Austin, right? So we're close to the 35 too. So, whatever that might be, it's like the meaning that we've attached to that. For some people, it's like, oh, they didn't see me. Oh, they didn't see me.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Like, I mean, again, we could go on and on and on.
When you said one of the most important things is to be aware, I wanted to share a practice that I love so much is the Dr. Joe meditations of the morning and the evening. Have you heard of those or seen those? Where in the morning, you basically embody, okay, who do I want to be today? And then who do I not want to be? You become aware of the patterns that aren't working. And then he brings you back to, okay, feel into the version of who you do want to be. And I hear him now, come on, open your heart. And I'm thinking, it's open, Dr. Joe. And then at the end of the day, you do the evening one, which is, really has you reflect on, okay, how were you today? And I notice when I do those, I watch myself more throughout the day. Like, oh, I'm going to pick up my phone and look at my Gmail. Why? I don't need to. Like, different things, different behaviors. I'm like, wait, this isn't connected to my new sense of self. So that's really, really helped me in a lot of ways.
So good.
Yeah. So with the body, the spine, and that being our flow of energy that connects to how we experience life and take life in, do you think the earth has an energetic spine?
Oh, a nervous system?
Yeah, nervous system.
100%.
And that certain parts of the nervous system are on certain parts of the earth. I know I'm going way out there.
Yeah. And it's like, and this is something, I swear even Mateo just talked about this also, about how his view, and this is my 7-year-old, about how the earth as its own living thing, right? And then we are all these other parts of, when we talk about oneness, I mean, this really is truly what it is. And when we start to see and experience the planet and what's happening in one particular area in relationship, what might be happening on the other side of the planet, like there's no mistake. When one particular system starts to arise, like what happens to this particular system or vice versa. So to me, how I experience that is absolutely like a living organism. And then when we look at even bigger of like, well, what affects that? Each of our individual nervous systems in terms of how the resonance or the energy of what it is that we bring out to the world not only affects you, it affects every other person that I'm going to encounter that particular day. It's also going to encounter how it is that I interact with the choices that I make that also affect literally our planet. It affects how it is that I see and experience the world. If I'm so self-centric and focused just on myself, then this prefrontal cortex clearly is not online. My survival part of my brain is the one that's running the show because it's all about me. How that shows up in the world is, again, it's a big reflection of that. So in my work, when I'm working with somebody, I'm not just working with that individual. I'm literally seeing and experiencing the entire planet or the humanity as one system. And this person who's on the table is a representative of the possibility of what can happen when one soul, one spine can go out into the world more wired to their authentic nature, to do more for the world, to be more for the world, not just for themselves, but truly from a place of openness, from that rapturous, seductive, magical place of love or whatever it is that you want to call it. But there's more bandwidth for life. That not only are they able to achieve and manifest their own dreams, they're able to actually contribute and do something more for the world.
Wow. I think all my leg hairs just grew back. Wow, Dr. Jeannie.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I can't believe that hour just flew by.
Holy smokes. Wow.
So The Hive, Austin, Texas. You need to go see Dr. Jeannie. I'm so excited for because I didn't start right then and there with you because you were going on maternity leave.
Yes.
And I know that you have another practitioner at the time you did. Mm-hmm. Do you still have another practitioner?
Nope, just me.
Okay. And I was like, I want to be with you, Dr. Jeannie. So now I have my reeval in September. Yeah. Tell everyone how they can find you.
Amazing. So we're the Hive Austin on Instagram. thehiveaustin.com is my webpage. And if you are not in the Austin area and you're looking for a network spinal practitioner anywhere in the world, that, you're looking to upgrade your life, experience more in your body, in your life, your relationships, your business, your finance, reach out. I would be more than happy to be able to connect you with somebody anywhere around the world if there's, hopefully somebody near you. So, yeah, that's essentially where I'm present, I think, in the interwebs.
And you even I was just at one of Dr. Jeannie's community dinners.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz told me pointed at he said he drives up every week from Houston.
Yeah.
It's a 3-hour drive. Okay, that just shows how magnificent this work is. A 3-hour drive every week for a session.
Yeah. So I see people from Houston. I see people from Dallas. I see people from San Antonio. I have people who fly in every once in a while. Yeah.
I have one friend Sasha, who's in Chicago. She's like, you guys are so lucky to have Dr. Jeannie in Austin. So just so you know, if you're an Austin listener, we are very blessed and lucky. And all of the links that she just shared are down in the show notes. So you can click them and you can send her a message and get connected. And thank you so much, Dr. Jeannie, for the work and everything that you're doing in this world and the difference that you're making, and for spending the last hour with me to share all of these messages with everyone.
Such an honor. Such an honor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and you can find a ton more free tips on my Instagram under Rebecca Boatman. If you are curious about my online membership and community, you can click the link that is in the description and see the page that explains everything you get to support you on your journey to attracting and building a healthy relationship. And I hope to see you inside.